This is a T-72.
Don't. No, that's not a T-72.
This is a T-72.
No, there, over there.
That
yeah,
way.
that one.
This,
that one.
stand here?
Yeah.
So this here.
That one.
This is a T-72M.
Well done, we got there.
Unfortunately, we've brought it inside, so we're not working in the rain. So, the reason we've got this vehicle is obviously, like everything we get, it's broken. So we've got some things to do, which we'll get onto in a bit. But I know absolutely nothing at all about T-72s, I'm not even going to lie. So we'll take a look around it, we'll look in the boxes, we'll look in the engine bay, we'll look in the turret, we'll look in the driver's area. If anyone else wants to see more bits of it or whatever, let us know in the comments and we'll have a little look. Starting off with, got these great big hooks, this big toe strap, which must obviously fit to a John Deere tractor, that's all I can imagine that's for. We also noticed, come over here, that the barrel has got some pretty big slits in it, which must be some sort of deactivation process. This is, if you look this way, which is quite unusual for us, this is the first smooth bore gun I've ever had anything to do with, so it's a smooth bore 120mm gun. So that's unusual. We like our chieftains and our centurions with rifle guns. But I think the first thing we'll look for is in the bins, because with any new vehicle that you get, you always need to look in the bins because sometimes there can be gold bars. So I think we might need some tools. At least that opens nice. Barrel cover. No gold so far, no gold. This isn't going well. Quite like these clips, when they work, when they're not bent. More emptiness. This is disappointing. This looks like a bit of a design flaw here. How are we gonna open... Ow. How are we going to look in this one with that? Is that the snorkel? Could you imagine going deep wading in a tank? Oh, look, more bolts! Well, the only thing I worry about is that looks like quite an important bolt there, and so does that. So, wonder what that means. That looks like a fuel tank. Got another one here, another box. Ow! Ah! Actually, I've decided I don't like them clips, they're bloody horrible. Ooh! If anyone can read that, please translate it and put it in the comments. Then I can try and work out where that is, or should be on the vehicle. Because I don't think it should be there. Not sure what these are. When you find all these sorts of things, it's a bit unnerving. That looks like a bung and it's got lots of iron filings around it. Let's hope that's not out the engine. Let's climb up on top and have a look in the driver's area and the turret. We're now going to have a little look in the driver's area, which looks like a real pain in the backside to get into when the gun's in this position. So this should be fun. You've got this massive infrared light and this handle that makes it elevate with the gun. And obviously when the gun's forward, it makes it incredibly hard to get in, which is very handy. Points against it in the... I've literally no idea where I'm going. Oh! That was easy. It's a bit close and personal here. I'm going to turn the isolator on and we'll now show you what it's like. There's something around my leg. Oh, it's only some hose. We'll show you what it's like actually inside the driver's compartment. Okay. Right, you join me inside the driver's area of the T-72. It is incredibly cramped in here. I can't stress that enough. we have a little air conditioning fan. I think we see some more of those in the turret. Right, so inside your T-72, you have your main isolator, which you click. That makes weird noises. That then puts on interior lights. You then have a series of switches here. No idea what they do. You then have more gauges and things. All I know is this button here makes the engine pre-oil, which you can hear. And obviously before you're starting one of these, not like most engines you just turn the key, start it up and away you go. If you do that on a Russian series tank, it needs to be pre-oiled first. So if you were to crank her over and run her up without pre-oiling it, you could actually damage the engine quite badly. Like the T-34, it can be started on air. So you have these tanks down here, which you turn the air on, you hear that little noise there. There's another one down there, you turn that on, actually bring some pressure on this gauge. Currently, there's bugger all in it, but once you've got your air on, you prime the oil pressure, and then you'd press this trigger here, and that would start the engine on air. But before you start it, you've got your clutch, brake, and accelerator, just like a normal car. But starting one of these is quite a lively thing. So if you were to start it as we are there with the brakes off and the clutch like that, it could, or it's likely to, start moving forward, backwards, or could do a lot of things. So they're not very refined. So best practice on one of these is to press the clutch and the brake. You can call it all sorts of horrible names if that helps. There's a handle here, you pull that on, that'll actually lock the brake and the clutch down, which means when you start it, there's no drive going to the gearbox, and the park brake is on. Basically that's the park brake now, so the tracks are locked in place so it doesn't wander. You've now got the gear shifter down here. H is neutral, obviously. 3 times, quite clearly, is reverse, and then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up to 7. I've only ever been in this gear so far, but pretty much when your engine's running, you press the clutch, you pop her up into first, and then you'd let off the clutch. The other way you could do it on these, because the Russian series vehicles, or the T-34s and T-72s and whatever, your tillers work quite a lot different to normal tanks. So the first pull is actually a clutch, and then you pull back a bit further, and then that applies a brake. So think of the drives from the gearbox to the tracks, they have a clutch in them, so like the push pedal. So you can actually clutch the drive, go into it, which then sends the power to the opposite side, so the vehicle will sort of bear one way or bear the other. But if you then want to do a hard turn, you pull it obviously back, so it starts obviously clutching, so the drive goes to the other side, but that obviously won't turn you sharp. So then you pull it back even further, and then that makes the brake on that track come on and screws it round like that. They cannot neutral turn. Another thing you can do with this, you can actually put it in the gear. You can let go of your clutch, but if you're holding both levers back at the same time, like I'm going to demonstrate with my knees, I wouldn't advise doing it like this. If I was now to let go of the clutch and it was in first, with the levers like this, it wouldn't actually move forward because both clutches to both drives are disconnected. And then what you can then do at the same time is push your levers forward, and that would also set your drive. And that's actually the better way of setting off, if you can help it. You've got your hand throttle down here. The way this basically works, if you want to start your engine, it's a little slit there, so you usually set your hand throttle about to that slit. So that's about the right idle. And then when you come to stop, the only way you can stop this engine is you let the idle off so far that the engine idles that low it actually stalls out. So that's how you effectively drive the thing. And obviously when you're going up the gears, you clutch, then into second, clutch, then into third, blah, 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 blah. Pretty easy. You've got loads of massive batteries right next to you, which is great. So if they start fizzing away, you know, and or explode, they're right next to the driver, which is a nice little feature there. Rather like that. And they're obviously nice and heavy to try and bring in through the hatch, which is great. To do an electric start, you'd usually press this button here, which has got another flap under it, which is one of the main problems we've got with this. So you'd press that down, it pre-oils, and then it should start the engine. But all this does is just dim the lights and bugger all happens. So we shall get on to that in another video. Anyway, we're now going to have a quick look inside the turret. And what better way to get inside the turret, because it's actually easier than me going out, is I'll go this way. Imagine doing this while you're in a swamp, or your vehicle's been hit and you're on fire. I think one thing needs to be said about the T-72 is, for anyone that thinks it's small in the turret, think even smaller. It is so ridiculously small in here. So can you imagine if you're on fire and you're trying to get out of this thing in a hurry? Just so people know, my legs are still hanging off the driver's seat here, and I'm under the commander's seat. So what you wouldn't want to happen right now is the gun to spin round and chop your feet off. But anyway, I'm going to try and make my way out. It's probably smoky in here. The thing's on fire. You probably wouldn't actually be able to see a thing. And I'm getting caught on literally everything, and there are many things. Oh, my foot's caught. Right. There we go. So, word of advice. If you do get your T-72 stuck and that you're the driver and your barrel's over the top, get ready, because it is pretty horrendous, even in easy circumstances, to climb out. So try not to get yourself in that situation where the barrel's covering your lid. Not fun, especially if you're big or fat or rude or stupid. Right, so with the T-72, it actually has a key, which is pretty cool. So as Seb found out, everything on this tank is trying to kill you, literally everything, whether it's the bin box, the hatches, or anything. Now, I assume this is how you close it. There you go. So anyone that's trying to break into the T-72, all you need is a little key like that. Not the most secure thing in the world. But quite simple. I quite like simple. We've found more boxes on the top, so I think what we ought to do before we go too far into the turret is continue our quest for gold bars. Oh, we've got a bit of a weld break there, a bit of a design flaw, poor quality. Any idea what should be in the back of this? That's cool. Is that for fueling her up? Is that something to do with the rear tanks? Let us know in the comment. We seem to have what looks to be an old-fashioned diesel pump filler in the rear bin on the turret. And what's this? Someone must know what that is. No idea. I haven't got a clue. I'm just going to put that back before I make myself look any more stupid than I already look. But at least we've actually found something pretty cool. We may find what that's for later. I don't know. Right. The last little bin to look in. Oh, yes! Now this is what we're talking about. Let's get away with that rubbish. Oh, we should have started the whole video wearing this. How does it work? Look how nice that is. I already feel like I'm in. Oh, yes. I can't actually hear a thing. These are incredibly sound deadening and soundproof. Oh, there's two. What is that? Ah, okay. This looks to me like the fuel transfer pump. So this must plug in. That's probably how they did it. You just hold them two wires on the battery and then you can use... I like these people already. What they're doing is they're stealing fuel. That's what this is. This is all the kit to go around stealing fuel for your own tank. So you go to people like that when they're broke down or when they're not looking, you'd simply get your fuel transfer pump, steal all their diesel, and then drive away happy. And they would be there broken down with no fuel. I like this tank already. It's all about surprising the enemy and taking their fuel. What else is in here? Birdhouse.
Is it?
That's a bird box.
Oh, okay.
That's a bird box for definite. What we got in here? Battery covers, I think. No idea. Another bird box. They'll be for the barrel sleeve, because as we looked at earlier in the video, they should have like a hard thermal cover. So I've been reading. Which has obviously been removed when they did their deactivation when it came into the country, or maybe that's a
Czech Republic
deactivation, I don't know, I'll have to study that. A lot of countries all have different deactivation processes on the main armament on tanks when they're shipping to and from countries, so you know, there's always a lot of differences there. That's another thing to learn about. I should put the fuel transfer pump back. I have to do a video to see if that actually works. I bet it does. Right.
How will it start on the
when we next go to a show, we park up next to Midland military vehicles. We shall steal their fuel. Right. I can only assume this is the Holy Bible for the vehicle. Issues. Oh, we have a book of issues. Check charge regularly. Oh, thank God for that. It was run up to temperature in 2013. Started with additional batteries, as it was cold. Not run for some time. Well, it seems that there isn't much in the library. So what I'm thinking here is the previous owner didn't actually use this vehicle for quite a long time, which is probably why the electronic start motor has died. So we'll let him off on that. People forget with these things, they need a lot of regular maintenance, and actually just because you parked them in a nice dry shed like this one doesn't mean that it's going to work every time you go to it. You know, electrics fail, starter motors, bearings, seals dry out. It's not actually a good thing. You know, oh, I've got a tank and I keep it in a shed and it'll be fine when I go to use it. No, it does not work like that. Even in the best circumstances, I mean, you know, at Bombington Tank Museum, they actually keep their vehicles in a heated controlled environment, and even then, you know, they can still give trouble. So it's just something to note. People that think it's clever to own their own tank, it's fun, but it also comes with a lot of things that you'd never think were possible. Things break, and you think, well, how can that break? And when I parked it up, it was fine in 2013, and now, you know, years go by, it's not something you use every day. So there's always a lot of maintenance to keep up on, which people tend to forget about. That is part of the gun holder, which we had to take off. We'll show you a short clip, because as I drove it into the shed, I hit the roller shutter door a little bit.
Stop!
And the brakes on this, as I found, you sort of press the brake, and then you press it a bit further, and you actually run out of leg. And then, for some whatever reason, then the T-72 goes, oh, you want the brakes on? And then it does that, you know what I mean? It's not like a normal vehicle, you press the brake and you stop straight away. There's a good 5-second delay, I found on this one, before it even considers putting the brakes on. It's like you're asking it the question, can you put the brake on? It goes, well, I'll have to think about that, put it to the border control, and oh yeah, we'll stop now. Another thing to notice is this one doesn't have smoke discharges on the outside. Someone will probably tell us why. I don't know. But again, let us know in the comments why that is. And obviously this side, we don't have any toolboxes whatsoever. It's just more storage fuel tanks. We've learnt all this so far from Ted. He's the master and brains behind the whole operation. Now, the bit I'm quite keen to look at is actually inside the engine bay. I mean, I'm not that interested in that side of it. I like to know how the things works, how it works. What's up, Ted? Ready? There we go. Right, so this is a little look at the transmission. The fan has got a great big coupler driven off this gearbox here. Massive, isn't it? Right, so it looks like obviously here what we did is lift the radiator up with these two massive cooling hoses. I like the idea on these sort of vehicles how all the pipes are colour coded. So obviously green being water, brown is often oil, and yellow for air and things like that. So that's quite cool. So even if you don't know what you're doing, you can look at the colour of a hose and you go, actually, well, we know what that actually is carrying inside, which is quite a good idea, I think. But I can see the starter motor is there. Can you see that, Seb?
If you have one anyway.
There is the starter motor. Just simply there, which is right next to the exhaust branch manifold covered by that tin. So that looks like an absolute nightmare to get at. There's obviously oil down there, and there is a bolt. That's quite concerning. Where's the bolt come from? And what you don't want is the bolt getting into the fan, because what we don't want is to wreck it. So first thing you do when you ever get a vehicle, even if it's been restored or whatever, you have a good little look round through it, because some people's idea of mint condition and great condition are totally different to other people's idea. I can't hold it any longer. You ready? 3, 2, 1, drop it. Whew. It is actually sprung loaded. It didn't quite cram down and hit anyone like I thought it might. And watch it come up. That actually goes up dead easily. Now, does that lock? We are taking a look at the engine for the first time, and it is in fantastic looking condition for its age. Actually, I'm pretty impressed with this. It is immaculate. Obviously that doesn't tell us a lot of how it's going, what it's like on the inside of the engine, but the way it ran when we drove it in here, it did actually run really, really nice. But you can see, again, people that have watched the T-34 videos will notice these rocker covers look so similar. The injector pump looks very much the same. The way the injectors go into the heads, the same. The fuel filters look pretty much exactly the same. The pump, at first glance, I can see there's a few little differences down there, but the actual injector pump itself is very much identical. And what we have here, which is different to the other, is we have a turbocharger. So air's getting sucked in here, exhaust gases. One minute. No. Pass me a torch, please, Seb. Thank you. Pass me a better torch, please, Seb. What we have here is a supercharger. So air's being brought in here, and it's actually being supercharged, not driven off the exhaust gases like a turbo. It's actually driven off the crank. So the supercharger will be turning much faster than the rotation of the engine, which will be compressing forced air induction into the engine, and with more air coming in needs more fuel. So what they'll have done to get this original engine, the T-34 for instance, is about 500 horsepower. And it is pretty much the same engine from what I can see here, and what they've done is they've bolted on a supercharger and they've probably upped the injector pump, so it's actually injecting more diesel. So more fuel and more air has created this engine to get up to about 780 to 800 horsepower, using the very same engine that they use pretty much from the war. So that's quite impressive, and I do like this engine. Although the one in my T-34 is knackered at the minute, I still like it. I think it's a good engine. As we can see, they run when they're absolutely bollocksed. So you've got a massive air cleaner there. That's quite dusty, but for the first look, the whole thing is in pretty good condition. There's a little bit of oil on the bottom of the floor, I can see, under the engine, but when I say a little bit, it's actually less than a Chieftain, and we like Chieftains. So it's looking pretty good, quite happy. It looks like it's going to be a... Huh?
Finish what you were going to say.
No, I forgot what I was going to say.
Just make a note, there's obvious difference. The engine is bolted the wrong way around.
Oh, yeah.
I've never been in a tank where the engine is that way around. Even that is in line.
Okay. As I've just thought about then, with no note from Seb, is the engine is transverse. It's fitted completely in the wrong direction to what we're normally used to in a Chieftain or a 432 or a Centurion, where the engine is in line. What they've done is they've brought it this way to make the tank actually not as long, which is a good idea-ish. But what that does mean, oh, that's aluminium. Aluminium bins. Learned something there. So what that means is actually the vehicle is a lot smaller and actually a lot lighter. So what are these? Are these 30 ton? Oh, it's 41 ton.
41 ton.
Is heavier than we both thought. Before I'm going, no, they were not 31 ton. They were much heavier. They are. You are right. It is 40
Still
ton.
15 ton lighter than the Chieftain.
Sorry.
It's still 15 ton lighter than the Chieftain.
And to put that into perspective, that's a 432. That whole vehicle there. It's that much lighter than the Chieftain tank, which is quite impressive, really.
Still really got an 800.
Which does mean that it can go quite a lot faster than the Chieftain, which we will probably show you, but not this time of year. Plus, there's a lot of little things we want to do to this before we take it out for a real good thrash around. And from what I've been told by a lot of people on Instagram or whatever, that they say these really turn into their own when you get into the higher gears. So again, we'll do I'll give you my honest opinion of the vehicle and the speed once we can do that. But for now, I'm quite impressed with it overall. Like we were just saying, the fact that you can actually get at the engine with the gun forward, and probably the gun in pretty much any order other than facing back, is quite a good design. You can't always choose where you break down. That's one thing to remember. So if you break down, your gun's in the wrong place and you can't get your engine, you're bollocksed. Whereas this looks like you've got a lot greater chance of at least getting in. I mean, I'm not going to lie, there is very little I could mend from the top here. If it's a fuel injection trouble or maybe a filter, that I can do. But any more than that, it looks like a fairly major job to do anything else. We will do a video of looking into the fault with the starter. That'll be in a separate video. Yes. Right, as you can see, there's loads of room in here. Right, I'm now sat in the commander's position, and this is the 125mm gun. Definitely not the 120mm gun that I mentioned earlier. This one's actually gained 5mm since then. For all those people.
He's warming up in him.
What is this for? I'm pretty sure we shouldn't have. That should not be there. What even is it from? Anyway, this is an autoloader, which I've never ever seen before in person, and it looks very, very scary. If you look down there, that's the flaps that come up, and we're actually sat on top of a carousel of, is it 21 rounds are in there or something like that? I should know. People will know. You know, there's a lot of explosives under our arses right now, and unfortunately, like some poor buggers know, that when the tanks hit, those go off and then the turret goes off. So I can only imagine just how bloody terrifying it must feel being in here knowing that. Anyway, that aside, I take it this must be like the gun computer. Now, what is that? So, as far as I'm aware, these don't have, this compared to the Chieftain, for instance, doesn't have a stabilised gun, which basically means if you're driving around and trying to shoot at a vehicle while it's driving, you know, the gun's about as much use as chucking a handful of rice at a camel's arse as opposed to hitting the target. So that's quite a big difference compared to the Chieftain. But the gun itself fires high explosive. It also fires high explosive anti-tank. What was it called again?
Armour piercing, thin stabilised, discarded sabot.
It fires armoured piercing, thin stabilised and discarded sabot rounds. And also, sometimes the commander's arm. Because obviously this is all flying around and shoving things in. if you were to stray and get your hand anywhere near here, apparently there are quite a lot of horror stories where commanders, or the loader's arm, no, the aimer's arm. You don't have a loader, do you?
Have a loader.
No, it's a three-man crew, so you know that's pretty crazy as well. Yeah, so people actually, if you strayed and had limbs over in this area when she was loading, quite often apparently you had your arm put up there. You know, that'd be quite a shock, wouldn't it, as being in the opposed tank and then someone's arm comes flying at you and hits you in the periscope. That's a lovely thought. So once the gun's actually fired the round, it'll actually, the spent shell casing as it was, got to go somewhere. And what it actually does is, there's a hatch here which opens itself and it just yeets that out the back of the turret. But jokes aside, being inside this thing for the first time, as you can see, I'm wearing this helmet, which is really well padded and nice, and that's because the simple reason. In a British Army tank, for instance, like a Chieftain or a Challenger, the inside's all padded, there's guardrails around your feet, and actually the level of health and safety for the crew is quite high, not to mention the room you can move around. If your arm moves a little bit, it isn't going to get chopped off by something. In here, I can't stress just how confined, how claustrophobic it must be. Well, not must be, is. We're in it, and it is. I'm not a claustrophobic person. This is awful. And I can imagine with the hatches down, it's even worse. Then you've got to add the smells, the engines running, the heat, the gun, the smoke, obviously, that's coming out the gun when it fires. I can't begin to stress how horrendous it must be for those that are, you know, currently using these things for the intended purpose. So, you know, and it's like that, going back to the guardrails, when the turret traverses, if my foot gets anywhere outside of where I'm sat, it's going to get ripped off and you're not even going to know. And like Seb's showing you now, he's actually in the gunner's position, so he'd be aiming the gun. You've got manual controls and you've got electronic controls. He would be zooming the gun round left and right, and he wouldn't actually know what damage is done to his commander, had his leg strayed out, or even as the driver. If the driver, for whatever reason, tried to exit the vehicle, as I did in that shot then, and the gun was traversed round, it would chop his head off or his arm or his limb. It would be pretty horrendous, and like, there's nowhere for you to go. So once you've got mangled up in it, some poor bugger's got to clean you out of it. I mean, that must be also a horrendous job. What else should we mention?
It's just genuinely a piece of shit.
As a summary of inside the vehicle is pretty awful. I'm not trying to be biased. I do like the vehicle. And, you know, I can't believe that this is still being used, because this is probably one of the most horrendous spaces I'd ever be asked to work in this sort of environment. That aside, you know, it is wonderfully simple. The carousel autoloader, I think as a rule, is a very, very reliable thing. And what can you get, like 8 rounds off a minute, which is pretty impressive, I'd say, for something like this. As far as health and safety is concerned, there is no health and safety when it comes to a T-72. Nothing. It's quite interesting to see tank design. Our most up-to-date tank that we're very fond of is the Chieftain. And to see the two comparisons, obviously we know our Chieftains a lot more than anything else, and to see the differences, you know, is quite amazing. And you know, I'm not trying to be biased or anything, but as a person, it would be the Chieftain I got in every single time, for the safety and the comfort, and actually it's a lot less claustrophobic. I'm not going to say it's a better tank, but for me, if there was a war, I would hate to be getting in one of these. I couldn't think of anything worse. And not to mention, there isn't even a BB, so where the hell we have your cup of tea? It's just a complete joke. You'd have to, I don't know, get rid of something useless like, I don't know, the commander's feet, and put the BB down here. No, but jokes aside, where I'm sat here in a Chieftain, to think you'd have another bloke down there in front of you, the gunner, and I can barely fit my toes down there, let alone anything else. It is crazy cramped. But anyway, that's enough about the turret. If you would like to see more of the turret, please leave a message. If there's anything you can enlighten us with, obviously we don't know about this. I would like to learn all about what everything does inside this particular model. I'd like to see if we could get the gun to operate electronically left and right, and how to do that, and how to do that safely. Safely is going to be the thing in this. This is not the sort of tank that I think we could let anyone else in.
If
we have a person who can speak Czech as well?
Yeah, someone
Really
that could speak Czech, that would be quite useful. So if you know something, drop us an email, drop us a comment, get in touch. Ow! Moving back down to the front of the vehicle again, we've got one of my favourite parts, and that's Ted. We've also got a cool part of the vehicle, which is this spade that you can unbolt, flip it down, and what you can then do is use it as a blade to dig out a hole to get the hull lower down in the ground, so you've just got the turret sticking out, which I think is a pretty cool idea. Anything with a dozer blade, you know what I'm like, I like diggers and dozers, so that's pretty cool. And it has that as the standard. Down, boy, down, sit, good boy. Okay, so this weekend we've actually been down at the Tank Museum at Bovington, and we were doing a live stream. I was very, very nervous about this, but I think it went all right. You can actually look at that. We'll leave the link in the description. It is on the Tank Museum's YouTube channel. We met some really good people. Met the new director of the Tank Museum, met Tank Historia, Bruce Crompton. It was actually quite nice, so I was quite nervous about the talk I was going to be doing. So to sit down off camera and to sit talking to Bruce, and you know, he generally knows it. It's all up here, it's not scripted. He was telling us so much. I actually learned a lot about World War II vehicles where I sit there, which really took my mind off the nerves that I should have been nervous about, but anyway, I was nervous. So that was good. And again, Bruce goes on to tell me about he's doing a thing about amazing war stories, so that's something cool to watch. And I actually understand that we're not for everyone, you know, not everyone likes our humour. I'm just trying to show our experience as a group of friends, our hobby and what we enjoy doing, you know, and we want to have fun, because for us it is about having fun with these sorts of vehicles. Now, I actually find myself watching Australian Armour. They're really detailed, really interesting, and I also quite like watching Tinkering with Tanks at the Norfolk Tank Museum with Aaron and the gang. Until next time, we'll see you again. And my hat fell off.
This is my favourite part of the T-72, and it is the dismount feature, also known as the adult slide.